Hi, everybody. I'm Martin Bandyke, and it is time for another 107 one-on-one. And I'm so pleased to have with us today Passenger, aka singer-songwriter Michael Rosenberg, who is talking to us from Brighton, England today. Mike, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, Martin. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine, thanks. Yeah, getting through a pretty crazy year like the rest of the world, but yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, crazy indeed. My first question for everyone: how are you? How's your family? How are your friends? How have you maintained your sanity and your health over the last 13 months? How bad has it gotten in terms of COVID-19 cases in England, and where are you at as far as trying to get your vaccine there?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, yeah, my immediate family and friends are fine. Yeah, lockdown for me was interesting. I went through a breakup not long before it, and then suddenly was sort of yeah, no touring and sitting around with my cats for a few months. But yeah, it could have been a lot worse. And in fact, yeah, COVID's not been great here. I have to say, our government did not nail it, but the vaccines are rolling out pretty swiftly, I think. So yeah, it's looking like we're getting back to some kind of normal now.
Yeah, take us into what it's been like to. This has just got to be so strange for, in particular, musicians who are, reliant on touring for their major source of income. Suddenly, not being able to do that, and you live to be in front of audiences, and for this all to change, and you're going through a breakup on top of this. This has just got to be extraordinarily difficult, just for one's mental health, for a person like you for these past 14 months. What have you done to try to maintain your sanity through it all?
Yeah, to be honest, I've been on the road for the best part of a decade. I'd say on average I've been touring sort of 8, 9, 10 months of the year for the last 10. So it was a real abrupt kind of change, suddenly to be at home, to be in one place for that length of time without really an understanding of when things may change. It was definitely something I had to get used to. But actually, I think it's been really good for me, from a health perspective. Just not being on the road is draining and it's tiring, and you don't eat good food, you drink too much, you sleep in weird places, like the adrenaline of the gig sort of 5 or 6 times a week. It's a pretty, I'm not the first person to say it, it's a pretty ridiculous way of existing. So just to be at home and to kind of take the pressure off myself a little bit has been really good, and probably something I never would have done, I would have never pressed the pause button voluntarily. So in some ways I think having to stop for a bit is probably a good thing. But yeah, of course I miss shows. I miss it massively. I miss that connection. And it's one of those things you don't really understand how vital and special it is until you don't have it anymore. So yeah, we have plans to get back on the road towards the end of the year. So I'm fingers crossed that can happen.
Yeah, it's looking better and better here. We're giving away tickets on my morning show the last couple of weeks, which is just a thrill. All of these things that would normally be so normal, concerts and live events, and all of a sudden, that every ticket giveaway just seems like this miracle. Oh my God, we can perhaps all get together and hang out together and see music once again. What we take for granted. I always think of the Joni Mitchell song, "You don't know what you got till it's gone." They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. So yeah, I want to talk about this newest album. But I want to go back to early in your career, because I don't know if all of our 107one listeners realize that you've been at this for a while, and you did not achieve a level of God, we know that guy, we know Passenger, we know his music. This didn't happen immediately, not here, at least in the US. When did you start playing music professionally? It was a long time ago.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a very slow burn. I mean, I left school when I was sort of 17 and started playing tiny gigs around my hometown, and slowly but surely put a band together, and we released our first album back in sort of 2007 as passenger, and it was a sort of 5-piece band at that stage.
Yeah, it was a band. It was a full band at that
That's
time.
right. Yeah. And shortly after that, the album didn't really sort of take off in any way. And shortly after that, the band sort of broke up and went their separate ways. And that's when I started busking, which is for people who don't know, sort of street performing, just going out and playing on the streets. And yeah, I did that for sort of 5 or 6 years, mainly around Europe and Australia. And then, yeah, a couple of crazy things happened. I went on tour with Ed Sheeran and Let Her Go, sort of exploded into the world. So from then on, it's been, pretty, as I said, pretty relentless touring and recording and writing, and a kind of treadmill of craziness, really.
So your breakthrough here for us in Ann Arbor and at Ann Arbor's 107one was the single Let Her Go, which was it topped the charts in something like 16 countries or something like that. And this was in 2012 or so. Take us back to that time frame and when this was all happening to you. What were your feelings like, and what do you think about that song in particular? Just really touched a chord with listeners. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a mad thing, really, because I think as a kid, when you're small and you want to become a pop star or whatever, and you kind of have these visions of #1 singles and all of this craziness, and you get a bit older and you actually start a career in music, and you realize very quickly, actually, that's ridiculous and it's not going to happen to me. Like I don't make that kind of music. I'm not a pop star. I make folk music. I make finger picking storyteller folk music, and that usually doesn't top the charts.
Right. Your music is, what we love about it is that the intimacy. I mean, you've more than once been compared to the likes of Harry Chapin or Donovan, artists who I grew up listening to. And yeah, those two folks became pop stars, but they're not, neither one is Mick Jagger or anything like that,
We live in a very different era now where it's less and less likely for those songs to break through. So I think you just become very realistic about what you're doing, and it's fine. Like, I wasn't upset by that. I was like, you can still make a very good living, and you can kind of get big in a different way, maybe. But then for a song to actually do all of those things that 7-year-old Mike was hoping for, it's pretty baffling, really, and especially because I wrote that song in 45 minutes backstage at a pub that I was about to play in front of about 40 people in Australia, and I didn't think much of it. I thought it was a nice song and whatever, but my world at the time, it just wasn't a possibility for a song to even get on the radio, let alone do what it did. So yeah, it's a long story. It was an incredible experience to see the song just kind of domino around the world. And yeah, it just kind of caught fire. And yeah, in the States especially, the real sort of touch paper moment was the Budweiser advert that was played at halftime in the Super Bowl with the puppy and the horse and all of that cute stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to pick my song was just blind luck, really. It was mad. So I think that had a huge impact on the States, and people's awareness of my music from there really grew.
And as a kid, as a 7-year-old wanting to do this for a living, I'm curious, who were your heroes then, and who are some of the people who you still emulate to this day? I'm wondering.
Yeah, my dad's actually from America. He's from New Jersey.
Right. Yeah. And your mom's from England, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So they brought me up on a really good diet of both English and American sort of singer-songwriters, lots of Simon and Garfunkel, lots of James Taylor, Cat Stevens, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison, this kind of stuff. So yeah, they're still kind of my go-to. That era of music is forever going to be special for me. And as far as songwriting goes, that's definitely what I've based what I do on, for sure.
And this experience of busking, where you're out outside bus stops, outside subway stations, out in busy street corners with the guitar case open, I assume, and playing songs to a lot of people who are probably walking right by you and do not care who passenger, aka Michael Rosenberg, is. But you must have learned a ton of things about, all right, how do I grab a listener who's really not perhaps interested in me? What were some of the things that you picked up as a busker that you still use on stage to this day?
Masses. I mean, like, as far as stagecraft goes, it was a real game changer.
Yeah.
As you say, you find yourself in these environments where people are just out to get a sandwich, or they're going to a clothes store or whatever. They're not really, they never signed up to come and listen to some singer-songwriter, you know. So if you're able to engage those people, if you're able to stop those people in the street and even, you know, encourage them to buy a CD or whatever it was, actually by the time you get to playing a proper stage where people want to come and listen to music, they want to come and see that kind of thing, it's a lot easier. It's almost like you've done. I always liken it to, you know, like soccer players that grow up in, you know, the favelas of Brazil that play football with like an old tennis ball or whatever. By the time they've got like a football and like a really nice pair of football boots and all that kind of stuff, it's easy because they're used to playing barefoot in the street, you know. So it's a similar thing. It's like once you get to that point, it's not easy, but you're certainly sort of equipped for it. But beyond that, I think it taught me an awful lot about being a human being as well, you know, and having empathy towards people. You know, you end up spending a lot of time standing in the middle of town centers and watching people and engaging and interacting with people that you wouldn't necessarily do, you know, in everyday life. And, you know, a ton of fascinating human beings that I crossed paths with at that time and taught me a lot about myself and who I was and who I wanted to be. And I think I grew up an awful lot from that experience.
Were your parents always supportive of you wanting to be a musician, doing that for a living?
For the most part. I mean, they were hugely supportive of me playing music. That, you know, they got me a guitar when I was about 7 or 8 and you know, paid for guitar lessons throughout my teens, and, you know, actually sort of carried me kicking and screaming through that a little bit, you know, and I'm so glad that they did. I think it was a little bit tough when I said I was dropping out of school and I wanted to be a musician, and, you know,
I bet.
I think it was a little bit hard, but I think once they realized that I was serious about it and saw how hard I was working, they've been nothing but supportive, and yeah, obviously very proud now.
Oh, God, I bet. Well, let's come into the present here and talk about Songs for the Drunken, Brokenhearted. Wow, what an album title. Talk about Heart on Your Sleeve. My goodness gracious. So this was released just a couple months ago in early January. Is this all written and recorded during the pandemic, Michael?
No, most of it was actually written before. It was kind of the first version of this album was finished sort of Feb 2020 and was set to be released in May. And
of last year.
Right. And as we approached the release date, it just felt so sad to be putting an album out into the world without the means to kind of get behind it and support it. We couldn't make videos, we couldn't go out and play shows, we couldn't do anything to kind of gain any momentum. So I held the album back, and I'm so glad I did, because I ended up writing a ton of songs and adding some new ones and taking some old ones off. And I think the album is a far better collection of songs as a result.
Is Sword from the Stone, which we're playing a ton right now in 107one, is that one of the newer songs?
Thank you for playing it.
Yeah. God.
Yeah, it was one of the newer songs. It was, and I think you can hear it. I think in the lyrics, I think it feels hopefully very relatable to anyone who's been through that kind of lockdown situation, that, you know, being up and down like a yo-yo and time slowing down and speeding up and this kind of weird woozy roller coaster that we've all been on. It was one of the new ones for sure. And I think, you know, a song that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, that the lyrics just jump out. There's another song by an American artist who goes by the name of Hiss Golden Messenger, a
Mhm.
song called Sanctuary, which again has the same lyrical feel to it, which is one of at times despair and utter confusion as to what is going on in the world and with our lives right now, but
Yeah.
tries to find some bit of hope somewhere because that's what we have to do. And I'm just convinced that once we are able to get back to seeing people like you, Mike, in concert and other artists that we cherish, that there's just going to be nothing like it. I think there are going to be many tears shed at many
Sure.
shows initially once we're able to get back together for a whole bunch of reasons. Talk more about the album. Who did you work with in terms of a producer? Any other? Do you co-write songs typically with anybody else? Do you do that normally?
Not often. The writing process is quite a private one for me usually. 99.9% of all the songs are written by me. But I've been working with Chris Vallejo for 8-9 albums now, who is my producer. So we work together. It's sort of the two of us kind of co-producing, and then we have a bunch of fantastic. Oh, someone on a motorbike. Sorry. We have a bunch of fantastic musicians to call upon. And, at the moment and over the last year or two, that's obviously been a lot more sort of remote recording, which is an amazing thing, really. The fact that all of these musicians have their own little recording setups in their houses or whatever. And so a lot of this album was sort of compiled from, our guitarist recording something in Germany, and then, our bass player recording something in Indiana and so on. So it was an interesting way of making a record, but it was cool. It was nice to do it in a different way. I think it kind of keeps you on your toes and prevents you from getting complacent in what you're doing.
I want to hear more about this man, Chris Vallejo, who you've worked with as a co-producer for a while. How did you first meet, and what's the magic? I think producers still have, to many of us, this sort of mysterious but essential role with albums coming out the way they do. When you think about someone like, say, George Martin with the Beatles, the music wouldn't be the same. What kind of magic does Chris bring to the table? And when did you first meet?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into. So he's Australian. He had a recording studio in Sydney, and I spent a lot of time in Australia, busking and playing shows and whatever. And I was looking around at studios to record, I think, my 5th album, which actually ended up being the one with Let Her Go on it. All the little lights.
Yeah.
And I was just shopping around, and I stumbled into his studio, and for me, he was just so enthusiastic. I played him some songs, and I could genuinely see, that he loved it. He really got it. He loved what I was doing, and he just showed this real sort of like, nothing's a problem, and I will work as hard and as long as I can to get this right, to get this record as good as it can be. And I think that's massive for me. I think every artist is different. I think, I totally get it that, a lot of artists kind of move around and want to work with a different producer in a different studio every album and test themselves and challenge themselves in different ways. Really, honestly, like, Chris is one of my best friends, and make music with someone who you really trust and you really work well with, it takes a lot of the stress out of it. It takes a lot of the pressure out of it. And, I think every record we make, as I say, I think we've made 7 or 8 now. And I think we've learned so much together. We have such a joint experience now, and we have a real understanding of what we've done and where we've come from and where we're trying to go. I think that's really invaluable, actually. And I'd say, not just with producer relationships, but most relationships in life, be they professional or personal, I think the longer you are with someone, the better an understanding you have of them, and hopefully the easier it becomes and the stronger that connection becomes. And to be honest, with Passenger and in the rest of my life, I try and nurture those relationships as best I can.
You had mentioned earlier that you wrote "Let Her Go." What did you say? About 45 minutes backstage at a club. What could you name a song? Not necessarily even from your newest album, but any song that you've written that took a really long time to come together, and because you were patient and because you took the time to really craft something that wasn't easy, that took a long time, that was, that you were particularly proud of as well. Is there one that stands out in your catalog?
It's a really good question. To be really honest, more and more, like, I think I've definitely sort of chipped away at songs early in my career, and really sort of, sat there for, and it can literally take months. You can come back to it after a month or two and create another verse and then go away again. And honestly, in my experience, the easier they come, usually the better they are, because there's less overanalyzing, there's less overthinking going on. Something like "Let Her Go," the fact that it came out in 45 minutes, I didn't overthink it. It's such a genuine notion, and I think that's why everybody gets it. Everybody sort of understands it instantly, because it came out instantly. It's a very immediate kind of impact. And I'm not saying, I mean, like, I'm sure there are bands and artists that, take years over songs and they're beautifully crafted. But for me, actually, more and more, if there's something exciting about a song, and if it comes quickly and not quickly necessarily, but naturally, and it flows and it feels good, they're usually the best ones, to be honest.
Yeah.
For me.
Was "Sword from the Stone" similar to that? Did that come up pretty quickly?
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as I stumbled across that chorus, it was just a matter of kind of filling in the gaps, really.
So what do you have planned? Do you have any gigs actually lined up right now, or are you kind of waiting to see what the world's going to be like by summer or fall before you book any tour dates, Michael?
Yeah, we definitely have a bunch that are organized. Should be touring the UK in August, September, and then I think Europe will have to be shifted to next year. But we're still hoping for the States and Canada in the fall. So yeah, we'll be hopefully coming through in sort of October, November time. So fingers crossed that can happen.
I can't wait. Well, I love a man who loves cats. We have 4 in our household here. I was hoping one of your cats might just pop up on camera, but that's okay. How many cats do you have before we let you run?
I have 2, Charlie and Rosie. They're fantastic. They've been great company in this lockdown era. Yeah, 4. That's a serious amount of cats, man.
Yeah, 3 girls and 1 boy, and it can be kind of like herding cats around here, literally trying to keep everyone in line. But we love them, and yeah, they've certainly helped during all the isolation here of the last 14 months. Such a pleasure to talk to Michael Rosenberg, aka Passenger, Sword from the Stone, from his latest album, Songs for the Drunk and Broken Hearted. One of these artists, one of these songs that just touches you right here so directly. And it's music that is cathartic and beautiful and filled with emotion. And we just love what you do, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us on 107 One-on-One. We'll have to see you in the US of A, in Ann Arbor, sometime sooner rather than later. We appreciate it. Michael, thanks for joining us. Okay.
Really appreciate the support, man. Thanks for the chat as well.
All right. Cheers. Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, man. Bye.
Bye.